class. Capital relies on the class. Ma'am, I am at the bottom class. I am bottom class. You are top class. That's fine. I'm fine with that. I own nothing and I am happy.
Y'all can be here. I can be here too.
Hey, you're blocking traffic.
I don't give a Come here, man. Take that helmet off. Come sit there.
Nah, I'm gonna fight you with the helmet on. I'll give an advantage.
Because you're a boy.
I'm
No, you're a That's why you want to take it off.
I don't need to take it off. Wait, come do it. Come do something right now.
Too, at
Start
the
it.
same time.
Start.
What you mean?
Streets are ravaged. Look at our streets. There's homelessness. It's full of garbage. Businesses are leaving. We are not a thriving city. Our city is falling. It's horrible here. It's a man. In the 80s, do you remember? It was a beautiful city here. There was no racism and all this stuff. I mean, it's been going on for years. I mean, that's never going to change. But this is the George Soros woke paid. These are paid protesters. That's what it is. I believe in God. That's what it is. You know, you believe in God, the Lord. I don't want communism in my country. I don't want Marxism. I don't want socialism. You know, people come down here and they have Palestine flags and then they burn flags. And this is America. How can you keep America great? You can't let borders. You can't open borders and just let anybody and everybody come in here. We won't have a foundation of a country.
I disagree with it because I pay taxes. Because this is all. If they ain't over here for proper purpose, then why they here? They're escaping some bullshit, and I get that, but at the same time, no. Deal with their own. I don't give a I don't care.
Long live Tony Kirk and let's go Trump! Long live Tony Kirk and let's go Trump! Long live Tony Kirk! Let's go Trump! This used to be a beautiful country, beautiful state. Let's bring it back. These illegals have no rights over here. I have to pay for this stuff. I struggle every day. I struggle every day. And I work my ass off. Fight for mine. What you doing?
Why is it every time we get why is it every time he's always one let's talk about this. If we really want to say
We're going to go out there and we're going to make sure that there's consequences for the way that they're behaving, and that we're going to prosecute them. We're going to bring them to justice. We're going to take it this anymore.
Anti-ICE protests erupting in Portland and Chicago this week, resulting in several arrests. This as Portland becomes the next target for the Trump administration to deploy the National Guard as part of President Trump's crime crackdown. Christina Coleman is here with the latest. Hi, Christina.
Hi, Mike. Portland police says their rapid response team arrested 2 men who refused to get out of the street and engaged in aggressive behavior toward each other during the protests last night. Also, the DOJ is launching an investigation into the arrest of independent conservative journalist Nicholas Sorter. He was one of a number of people arrested Thursday night by Portland police during the protests. After he was released from jail, he told Fox News that he never expected to get arrested.
I'm being jumped by Antifa thugs. I get back up, I stumble away and go back toward cops where I think, at least, all right, well, maybe that'll be a safer place for me to go.
Also in Portland, during the ongoing violence outside the ICE facility there, a fistfight broke out between an ICE supporter and anti-ICE protester Thursday night. Police were not there to intervene. Federal authorities say local politics is impacting police involvement.
Unfortunately, local police has been restricted from responding or cooperating at all with federal authorities, which is completely absurd.
And things also got violent outside of the ICE facility in Broadview, Illinois, again early yesterday morning, with anti-ICE protesters clashing with law enforcement. Broadview's mayor blames federal authorities for the chaos.
When you see agents dispersing tear gas or chemical minutia or rubber pellets, what do you call it? It's unacceptable. We don't need to be policed. We know how to maintain.
Well, officials within the Trump administration clearly feel differently based on the ongoing violence during the protests outside of the ICE facility in Broadview, Illinois over the past 3 weeks. Mike?
Christina Coleman reporting live. Christina, thanks very much. For more, let's bring in former Assistant U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. and Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Cully Stimson. Cully, welcome.
Hi there.
So what do you make of the reaction in Portland, Oregon?
So Portland joined the Union in 1859 as part of the Union. And part of the bargain you get when you become a state in this republic is that you have to allow for the enforcement of all laws, including federal laws, including ones you may not agree with.
Right.
So I actually think the blame lies with local leaders who don't allow police to do their job. The police are clearly for the enforcement of law, including federal law. I'm sure these local cops are friendly with the federal troops and the National Guardsmen. They're probably friends with them. And yet local leaders aren't allowing them to enforce the law. It's despicable, and they're the ones to blame. Trump wouldn't have to do any of this if local leaders cracked down on the laws there, period.
A former acting DEA administrator has this message for the folks in Portland. Let's play it. I'll get you to react.
The taxpayers are paying overtime for all these cops to be out there. But if they're not doing their job because these mayors and, in these different cities and the city councils are directing them to stand by, I got news for Portland. The National Guard is coming. The Secretary of War, the President of the United States are not going to tolerate it.
What's your take on that warning?
Love that guy. I mean, he's right? Look, you don't get to selectively enforce the law. And if you're holding the reins back on local police who you're funding, who you're asking to put their lives on the line every single day,
sure,
and then you tell them, do your job with one hand behind your back, and oh, by the way, don't cooperate with the feds, you're a lawless person. You're a lawless politician, and you should resign in disgrace.
All right, let's pivot to Chicago. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker offering his reaction to the surge in Chicago, saying, quote, federal agents reporting to Secretary Kristi Noem have spent weeks snatching up families, scaring law-abiding residents, violating due process rights, and even detaining U.S. citizens. They fail to focus on violent criminals and instead create panic in our communities. How do you respond?
It's a tremendous act of projection on his part. He's the one, his mayor's the one, that is not enforcing local law. It's the crime tsunami in Chicago, which I've written about, which I've talked about. I mean, there are parts of Chicago, as I've told you before, Mike, that are more dangerous than the war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan. So if they would do their jobs and unleash their police to do their jobs lawfully and work with local residents. By the way, Trump won. Okay, get over it, right? Federal law applies in Illinois, which joined the Union right after 1800. And so federal law, including immigration law, applies in Illinois. So cooperate. It's their fault that Trump is sending those folks there because they're not doing their job and they're for illegal immigration. And so Trump is like, look, I won on this. I even won the swing states. Get over it. And if you're not going to do your job, I'm going to second my folks to there to help them do their job.
Okay, to the sentencing of this would-be assassin of Justice Brett Kavanaugh, Nicholas Roske, now goes by Sophie, sentenced to 8 years. DOJ was seeking 30 years.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Well, it's an overtly light sentence. I agree with Carrie Severino's comment earlier that you put up on the screen. And remember, there is precedent for the Department of Justice appealing light sentences and winning. So the Benghazi bomber, murderer, thug, a guy named Katala, he was sentenced to a light sentence here in D.C. District Court. The judge gave him a light sentence. The U.S. Attorney's Office sought an appeal, and the D.C. Circuit, the second highest court in the land here in D.C., reversed and said, sentence him more harshly. In fact, what they said was the sentence was substantively unreasonably low in light of the gravity of his crimes. They're going to use that language in this appeal, and I think the D.C. Circuit, all of whom are federal judges, some may be wannabes on the Supreme Court, are going to say resentence him and sentence him to at least this.
Considering political violence recently, 2 assassination attempts against a presidential nominee, a former president of the United States, Charlie Kirk, a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Isn't that an argument for stiff sentences?
Well, you don't sentence based on the zeitgeist of the day. You sentence on the gravamen of the crime before the court.
Okay.
And of the facts in this particular case, when you want to take out 1/9 of the Supreme Court and you planned way ahead, you traveled all the way across the country, you had zip ties, and you had aspirations to take out more than one justice, maybe 1/3 of the Supreme Court, this judge was a little bit out to lunch, and she's going to get overruled.
We will follow this Roske case closely. Culley Stimson, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Protesters bringing violence to America's streets, but Democrats are refusing to help.
Yeah, and we're talking about the chaos that has broken out in Portland, Oregon, and in Chicago. The split screen you see here, the absolute violent assaults and riots happening as the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, saying, I want to be clear, there is no need for military troops on the ground in the state of Illinois. Go out to Portland, Oregon, the same exact thing you're seeing there, the same violence in the streets, more than 100 days of violent assaults on the ICE facility in Portland as the Attorney General there in Portland says that Portland is not the president's war-torn fantasy. Our city is not ravaged, and there's no rebellion. Joining us now, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. Madam Secretary, we just showed our viewers exactly the reality of what's playing out, and then the rhetoric of the Democratic leaders, and it seems to tell 2 different stories.
Yes, I've encouraged the governor of Oregon and of Illinois, and that attorney general should go down and spend some time with our ICE officers and with our Border Patrol officers and encounter the protesters that they do, because these individuals are shouting hateful things at them, threatening their families, putting their hands on them, and acts of violence are occurring on a regular basis. So they're just sitting far away in safe facilities, some of them with protective detail, which is a very different situation than trying to clean up the streets and help protect the families and the victims of these criminals that have been roaming for far too long.
So during the break, you told us that there are actually some individual agents who have been identified and have bounties placed on their heads. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we had a really strange incident yesterday where we had a caravan of 10 different vehicles that were following our Border Patrol agents and officers that were out there on the streets of Chicago. And they had followed them and gotten them cornered, pinned them down. And then our agents, when getting out of their cars, they tried to run them over and had semi-automatic handguns on them to where our agents had to protect themselves, and shots were fired, and an individual ended up in the hospital that was attacking these officers. Very dangerous situation. And then in that situation as well, this individual had threatened them previously and had told them that they all needed to go down and shouted expletives at them. So our intelligence indicates that these people are organized. They're getting more and more people on their team as far as attacking officers, and they're making plans to ambush them and to kill them. We have specific officers and agents that have bounties that have been put out on their heads. It's been $2,000 to kidnap them, $10,000 to kill them. They've released their pictures. They've sent them between their networks, and it's an extremely dangerous situation and unprecedented. So we've put protective detail around those individuals, changed some of our operations to keep our officers safe. But make no mistake, this isn't just about, protesting free speech or that they don't like that people out here are upholding the law of our country. They're actually going out there and saying, kill these people and we'll give you this much money to do it.
Well, and Secretary, I want to stay on the bounties. Who is issuing the bounties? I know that you guys are looking into groups like Antifa. Is it linked to that, or who is issuing these bounties? What do we know right now?
Well, I'm going to be careful what I say because we have investigations going on and these threats are out there. So I'm not going to give you specific officers, although they have been targeted towards specific officers and released their phone numbers or released their pictures. But it is gangs, it is cartel members, and known terrorist organizations, so foreign terrorist organizations as deemed by the president, but also ones that we have known for many, many years. And they are making sure that they know which officers are out there and being extremely effective, and they want to take them down because they want to try to stop the operations that are going that are keeping them from making money off their criminal networks.
Do you have any evidence that those same cartels are actually helping fund some of the protests themselves in terms of turning people out?
Well, we've been spending a lot of time working as a whole of government approach. And so I talked to Scott Bessent about this last night, and he's really helping us dig into the funding of these operations, where they're getting their money. When you're down there with these protesters and you're looking at them and interacting with them. I was in Chicago just 2 days ago. Watching these protesters and our officers engage with them. All the protesters are wearing the same gas masks. They're carrying the same kind of signs. Many of them were printed with the same font. They look like they came from the same company. To be that organized and have the same equipment to push back on law and order, you know that somebody is funding them and organizing them and that they're being paid. What would all these individuals be doing, and how are they affording their groceries, their rent, their homes? When they're down on the street protesting at 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and spending all day there just screaming horrible things at law enforcement, putting their hands on them and violating our laws.
Well, and what's for the life of me, I can't understand, Madam Secretary, and it was just weeks ago here on this couch, I asked you how concerned you were that one of your agents could be killed. In that time, since I asked you that, we have had bullets fired into the Dallas facility there, claiming the lives of 2 illegal aliens that were in custody, with your agents running into the fire to try and protect those detainees. And just 2 days after that incident on the streets of Chicago, there in Broadview, where all of this is happening, you have people chanting, "Shoot ICE, kill ICE." But for the life of me, I cannot understand why Democrat politicians and local leaders like Chicago's Mayor Brandon Johnson is literally calling you essentially a liar when you make the case that your ICE agents are being attacked. Here's a little bit of what he had to say. I want to get your response.
She has no idea what she's talking about. The Trump administration, they are completely delusional right now. And what they are promulgating in this particular moment are not just unconstitutional measures, but they're dangerous and reckless, and it's antithetical to who we are as a nation.
Madam Secretary, your reaction to that?
Well, let's remember that mayor has a less than 6% approval rating in Chicago. So the people who live there, less than 6%, think he might be doing somewhat of a good job. Overwhelmingly, that man is a failure. He's a failure for his people and hasn't stood up for the victims of the crimes that have happened in his city. So we're going to keep doing our work. Every day when we're there doing our operations, when I'm there with them, people on the streets are clapping as we do our work. They're clapping as these officers are arresting these bad criminals. And out of the 12 that we arrested during the short period of time I was there, 6 of them had criminal records in their backgrounds, that the state had arrested them and just turned them loose on the street again for assault, for weapons possession, for robbery. Those individuals now are off the streets thanks to President Trump, not thanks to that mayor who's delusional at best.
So do you tie a direct line between the rhetoric from people like Mayor Johnson and other Democrats to the actual increase in assaults and the threat of violence?
Oh, absolutely. He's giving them air cover. He's giving them air cover so they can go out and keep committing crimes. It's wrong. There should be consequences for that and for leaders that stand up and knowingly lie about the situation on the ground. This is a war zone. His city is a war zone, and he's lying so that criminals can go in there and destroy people's lives. You know, those individuals that live there are waking up to it. They understand that where we have gone, we've made it much more free. People are much safer. We've got 1,000 criminals that are off the streets of Chicago just because we've been there, not because of his help. And in fact, they don't even let our ICE officers and our Border Patrol officers use restrooms in facilities. Those men and women were telling us that they have to figure out even where they can go sit down for 5 minutes to have lunch or to use a restroom throughout their shift and their break. So they've made it a very difficult situation. But what I was so encouraged by was these officers love their jobs. They love their jobs. They're so excited that they get to go out there and serve our country. And they see normal, everyday people going to work who thank them. And I don't know if you saw those videos of those folks down there chanting USA
Indeed.
and holding signs encouraging ICE. If more Americans would do that, if you would go down there and show them when you have some spare time, it really is encouraging to our officers.
How are they holding up, Secretary? I mean, it's got to be hard to be called
they're
these
doing
names.
good.
Yeah.
I asked them that, too, because that's what I worry about. You get people yelling and screaming stuff in your face all day long. You know, you kind of lose perspective on where you are or what you're doing, but they're so encouraged. Many of these individuals that are on these swift response teams, they left home before we started the L.A. operation. They got called up to go to L.A. Just 24 hours before they had to pack and get there to help bring some law and order to Los Angeles. So they went from L.A. then to Chicago. So they've been gone for months, living in different hotels or situations there to bring safety and security. And they don't know necessarily when they'll go home to their families. But they said, we are all in for this because we know our families don't have a chance unless President Trump cleans up our streets and cleans up you know, the safety and the security of our schools and our communities. So they understand and they're true believers in this country and what it can be. And they don't want to see it get as dangerous in so many cities like it did in 2020 across the country when it was out of control. And we had the kind of violence that came from some of these same organizations.
Well, Secretary Noem, thank you so much for
Christina Coleman. She has the latest on this morning's attack on law enforcement in Illinois. Christina.
Hi, John. DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin says law enforcement officers were boxed in by 10 cars this morning in Broadview, Illinois, the very same area where anti-ICE crowds have been gathering for days. She said, quote, agents were unable to move their vehicle and exited the car. One of the drivers who rammed the law enforcement vehicle was armed with a semi-automatic weapon. She says law enforcement fired defensive shots at an armed U.S. citizen who drove herself to the hospital to get care for wounds. McLaughlin also said that the armed woman was named in a CBP intelligence bulletin last week for doxing agents and posting online, hey, to all my gang, let's F them up. Don't let them take anyone. Very disturbing. Things got violent outside of the ICE facility in Broadview, Illinois, again early yesterday morning. Take a look at that, with anti-ICE protesters clashing with law enforcement. Approximately 250 anti-ICE protesters gathered there. Federal agents fired pepper balls and tear gas to try and break up the crowd, blocking federal operations. Today, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker put out a statement saying the Trump administration intends to federalize 300 members of the Illinois National Guard in the coming hours. Pritzker said, quote, this morning, the Trump administration's Department of War gave me an ultimatum. Call up your troops or we will. It is absolutely outrageous and un-American to demand a governor send military troops within our own borders and against our will. Pritzker maintains that there's no need for military troops on the ground in Illinois, and he says he will not call up the National Guard. Meantime, in Portland, another city with ongoing violence outside of an ICE facility, a fistfight broke out out between an ICE supporter and anti-ICE protester. You could see there in that video that that was a conservative influencer who had been arrested by Portland police. Explained to our Bill Melugin what had happened. He has since been released. But there you go. You could see that fist fight between that ICE protester and anti-ICE supporter. There you go. There you see him laid out. That's just some of the ongoing violence there. Now, federal authorities say local politics is impacting police involvement. Take a listen.
Unfortunately, local police has been restricted from responding or cooperating at all with federal authorities, which is completely absurd.
Also last night, Portland police say they arrested 2 men who refused to get out of the street and engaged in aggressive behavior toward each other during the protests. Again, just some of the ongoing violence in that area, John. Very, very disturbing.
Yeah, Christina Coleman, what a week. Thank you. We just, pardon me, received this statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office. The Chicago U.S. Attorney's Office is aware of this serious incident, which placed officer life and safety at risk. This Department of Justice does not tolerate assaults and obstruction of our brave men and women in federal law enforcement. We will investigate and prosecute all those who assault or obstruct federal law enforcement, including public officials, and we will hold them accountable to the full extent of the law. That statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office.